By 475 BCE, wars between the 500 feudal states had reduced them to what became known as the Seven Warring States. In 246 BCE, at the age of only 13, King Zheng inherited the throne of Qin, one of the Seven Warring States. By the time he was 39 years old, he had conquered the other 6 warring states and unified all of China for the first time. At that time, he took a new name to go with his new title and became Qin Shi Huangdi, Emperor of all China. He wasted no time consolidating total control over his newly won empire. His first step was to standardize the Chinese language. By combining the common symbols of the 7 states, he created a set of 3,000 symbols that remain the core of the modern Chinese language today. While English uses 26 letters to make thousands of words, the Chinese language has a separate symbol for each word, totaling over 60,000. Next, Qin Shi Huangdi established one form of money and one set of laws. He didn't believe in freedom of speech, and it said he once buried alive 460 scholars and philosophers who had criticized him. In 214 BCE, Qin Shi Huangdi feared that the barbarians who lived to the west and north of his new empire might attempt an invasion. To defend against this possibility, he ordered that a great wall be built on his northern and western borders. At the time of his order, much of the wall already existed. As far back as 700 BCE, the state of Chu and others had built their own walls, and the emperor's plan was to connect them all together, thus creating the Great Wall of China. Once completed, the Great Wall would be 1,675 miles long as the crow flies. But with all its twists and turns, its total length is over 2,600 miles. The wall is between 20 and 40 feet tall, and the top is about 33 feet wide, which allowed 5 horsemen to ride side by side. Millions of Chinese lives were sacrificed to build the wall. Working on the wall was considered a death sentence. One of its Chinese nicknames is the world's longest cemetery. The emperor's plan for manning his great fortification was to have soldiers live by the wall with their families and maintain their own farms to feed themselves. Quite frequently, these resident soldier guardians would become friends with and trade with the people who lived on the other side. Qin Shi Huangdi also built a new palace and capital city named Xianyang, about 25 miles south of Chang'an. It was there that he began preparing his tomb. Like the Egyptians, the Chinese believed in the concept of mankind having both earthly and spiritual souls. This duality is symbolized in the Chinese concept of yin and yang. Firmly believing there was a life after death, the emperor decided he would need an army in the afterlife, and he set thousands of people to work making it, out of clay. Known as the Terracotta Army, the emperor's soldiers of the afterlife were a foot taller and larger than real men to give them extra strength and endurance. At the time of his death, in the year 210 BCE, arrayed in front of his tomb mound was his clay army of 10,000 men and horses, complete with weapons and even chariots. They were aligned in battle formation, facing the east, the direction from which his traditional enemies would have come. When the emperor was buried, entombed with him but still alive, were nearly 100 of his wives and every workman who knew the secrets of his tomb. His 20-year-old son, Shi, was then crowned the second emperor. Shi chose to live a reclusive life of luxury and extravagance, and he left the governing of the empire to his tutor, who was a very brutal man. In 207 BCE, the masses rebelled against the brutality of Shi's reign, and the Qin dynasty was ended in what is possibly the world's first successful peasant uprising. The revolt was led by a man who was born a peasant, turned into a bandit, and then became emperor. Liu Bang is one of the greatest of all Chinese folk heroes. He founded the Han dynasty and ruled as the Emperor Gao Di. Having suffered all the harsh indignities of living as a peasant under the Qin emperors, the new Han emperor's rule was a breath of fresh air. This new kind of government was based on the more caring and humane teachings of Confucius. In 139 BCE, Han Emperor Wu Di sent an envoy west to find out what other kingdoms there might be. During his 12 years away, the envoy traveled as far as the edge of the Greek world, and brought back word that beyond the barbarians there were kingdoms comparable to China. By 100 BCE, a great increase in trade took place, and the Han capital at Chang'an became the beginning of a trade route to the west known as the Silk Road. The Silk Road took its name from China's main export. Once the Western cultures learned of silk, they couldn't get enough of it, and not knowing how to make it, they paid the Chinese handsomely for their skills. Far from being as smooth as silk, the two principal trade routes to the west ran for about 2,500 miles across some of the roughest and most unforgiving terrain in Central Asia, including the Gobi Desert and the Pamir Mountains. Chang'an became the largest city in the world at that time, with a population of over 500,000. The court of the Han emperors flowered with refined culture. The main import coming back into China from the West was not goods or products, it was Buddhism. Based on the teachings of Buddha from the 5th century BCE in India, the new religion quickly gained a wide following in China. Pagodas, or centers of learning, sprang up across the land. The Wild Goose Pagoda of Xi'an has stood for over 1,400 years. After the fall of the Han Dynasty, China again became a collection of warring states. This time, however, there were only 3. The story of the struggle as each of the 3 kings tried to reunite China is told in the most famous of all Chinese historical novels, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The novel, written in the 14th century, tells the story of the kingdoms of Wu, Shu Han, and Wei. The kingdom of Wei was north on the Yellow River. The kingdoms Wu and Shu Han were located to the south along the Yangtze River, and much of the wars between the 3 kingdoms took place on or near the Yangtze. Known in China as the Changjiang, or Long River, the Yangtze is the longest river in all of Asia, and the 3rd longest river in the world. From its headwaters in the Himalayan mountains of Tibet, the Yangtze flows for 3,965 miles through central China on its way to the East China Sea. The 3 gorges of the Yangtze, considered by many to be the most spectacular geographical feature in all of China, have inspired Chinese poets and painters for many centuries. While Chinese civilization was developing on the Yellow River in the north, similar progress was being made on the Yangtze River to the south. The area along the Yangtze had become the rice bowl of China. Agriculture there was responsible for feeding most of the country, and it was for rice that the 3 kingdoms fought one another. There were grand battles on land with massive armies and mounted cavalry. There were also epic naval battles fought on the waters of the Yangtze because it was the primary means of quickly moving armies into position. Finally, in the year 280, King Wan Di of Wei succeeded in conquering his foes and reuniting China. However, history repeats itself, and after the death of Wan Di, the country again fell into warring dynasties that would persist until the beginning of the Sui dynasty in 581 CE. From clans and tribes of nomadic wanderers, the Chinese became a collection of small feudal states which eventually united into one country under the first emperor of the First Dynasty. Although each new dynasty would eventually fall, it would have added to the progress that had been made.